Chapter 1691, Uninvited Guests. Newton's first law is a very strange ability. It has no offensiveness, and its only function is to make the ability of the alien unstable in a short moment. But as long as it is used properly, it can play a very critical role.
For example, now.
When the mind ray and the ability to penetrate all things attacked the blood tide and the ability shield of the mind, Newton directly activated the ability of the first law. He grasped this opportunity very well. Both sides had suffered considerable damage in the previous battle, and the direct consumption of power had reached a certain level. So, at this time, both sides were on edge. And at such a time, disrupting the release of the other party's ability directly caused the blood tide and the ability barrier of the mind to become unstable. Boom! The mind ray directly penetrated the blood tide and the ability barrier of the mind, and the dazzling golden light directly hit them. In the golden light, the armor on the two people instantly turned into debris, and their bodies were completely exposed to Deng Shintong's Tiandao star. It was like a human falling into a crater. They had not seen the sun for countless years, and there was no factor in their bodies that could adapt to strong ultraviolet rays. In addition, they were hit at this time, and their weak bodies and double inadaptability to the external environment caused them to be seriously injured. The blood on Newton's face had not dried yet, and the light of the atheist in his hand became dim. Ahem. He lowered his head, suddenly covered his mouth and coughed loudly, and a few strands of thick blood flowed out along his fingers. Canero, who was not far away, glanced at him, but did not step forward. The previous attack launched by Blood Tide caused more damage than expected, directly damaging their internal organs and almost breaking their hearts. They have been holding on until now, and they are close to reaching their limits. Blood Tide and Nian fell to the ground. Nian used the last bit of strength to support the two. Otherwise, if they fell from a height of hundreds of meters, even an Epsilon-level alien would be smashed into a pulp alive. Nian stared at Newton and Canero in the distance cautiously, and then glanced at the seriously injured Blood Tide. He smiled bitterly. I'm preparing for this moment, right? Xuechao's long river of blood had dried up in the endless fighting. That was the source of his strength. He was extremely weak at this moment. Nian's condition was not much better. But he knew that the two opponents were still able to fight at this moment, and if they only relied on him, and were under the scorching sun of Tiandao Star, they would surely die. Use my blood, Nian suddenly said. He raised his right hand, pointed it like a knife, and then cut open the aorta of his left arm without any hesitation. Xuechao also did not hesitate at all, and directly peeled the blood from his body. The blood of the white chariot-level alien contained a powerful source of life. Xuechao's eyes were full of fierceness. He actually didn't care about Nian's life and drained the blood from his body in one breath. In less than a second, Nian was directly drained and turned into a shriveled corpse. And Xuechao, who had gained strength, stood up again, and his body had more strength to continue fighting. Damn it, it's so hard to kill. Newton put down his left hand, his palm full of blood, and he and Canero stared ahead cautiously. The next battle was probably a life-and-death battle. Even if they could win, they would most likely be buried with him. Roar! The blood tide that killed the deputy general had red eyes and roared angrily. The wind whistled over the entire battlefield. This time, he really intended to fight to the death with the two humans in front of him. At this time, the three of them had consumed a lot of energy and were in poor physical condition. If they continued to fight, it would only be a dead-end outcome. Canero and Newton also had grim faces and made preparations for the final battle. But at this moment, the brilliance in front of the blood tide suddenly changed. Everything in the space in front of him seemed to slow down. The blood tide raised his head blankly, and his mental strength at this time was almost at its limit. He actually saw snowflakes falling slowly in the sky at a speed that was almost static. Looking forward again, Newton and Canero had already lost their way. Is this an illusion? Xuechao immediately understood what was happening, and his heart was shaken. The coalition had already dispatched 3 Epsilon-level aliens to deal with them. Could there be a fourth person? But they were led by 4 silver-armored generals, and the gatekeeper of Hades took action personally, so the coalition could not have held back. Where did this new alien come from? Not only him, but even Newton and Canero were stunned at this time. The scene in front of them was the same as Xuechao's. They only saw the snow falling all over the sky, which was almost stagnant, and they could not see any other scenes. Even Xuechao disappeared from their sight. What happened? Could it be that a new alien appeared? Not sure. We don't know if the person coming is an enemy or a friend. Be careful. The two stood back to back and began to be on full alert to avoid being attacked by the sudden enemy. At this time, in Xuechao's vision, from a distant snowfield, a figure stepped on the soft snow and walked slowly towards him step by step. It was a petite figure, wearing a white cloak, and it was almost difficult to see the shadow in the snow. Xuechao opened his mouth and roared, and then forced a bloodline from his palm, turning into a blood arrow and shooting forward. The blood arrow penetrated the shadow, but it fell into the air. Everything was an illusion. Suddenly, Xuechao felt a burning sensation enveloping his whole body. He looked down and saw that his skin was burning. He couldn't tell whether it was an illusion or reality, but the strong light above his head made it almost impossible for him to see the whole world clearly. It was a huge sun, bursting with dazzling white light, completely dyeing the whole world into a hot yellow and white. Xuechao's body burned, and he roared angrily. "All this is fake. Don't try to deceive me." He knew it was an illusion because everything was too unreasonable. Even though his nerves felt pain, he knew that his body was not hurt. As long as his willpower was strong enough and he firmly believed that he was not injured, he would soon be able to break through this illusion. By then, the illusionist hiding in the dark would definitely be killed by him. Puff. Just as he had this thought, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. He couldn't see anything, so he could only reach out and touch it. He actually found a big hole in his chest that could fit his entire fist. Blood flowed out like a stream. "This is all fake," Blood Tide murmured. Chapter 1692. Full Power. On the main battlefield, Zhang Yi and others tried their best and finally penetrated the armor of the Hades gatekeeper. However, the continuous battle has made them realize the huge gap in strength between themselves and the Hades gatekeeper. They are not on the same level at all. Zhang Yi only tried to attack the Hades gatekeeper once, which was to use the divine domain purification to attack his armor. But so far, with an ability index of 28,000 points, he couldn't make the Hades gatekeeper bleed even a drop. He just made his armor a little broken. So now, he has completely given up the attack launched by himself, and decided to use his ability to cooperate with the allies around him. Delay the Hades gatekeeper and wait for the investigation results from the region. Or try to cooperate with Li Changgong's ability to make the Hades gatekeeper shed a drop of blood. Rumble. The ghost train quickly traveled through the void, and the Tianjiexing Daixing kept launching his abilities. He would not let the ghost train stay in one place for too long, because with the strength of the Hades gatekeeper, he might be able to quickly determine the location of the ghost train. The Hades gatekeeper had completely lost his patience at this time. His strength was so strong that the longer he stayed in this world, the greater the risk. Therefore, he began to increase his output strength. He opened his hands, and one after another, the star of destruction blasted wildly in all directions with him as the center. The energy attack that was enough to easily wipe out the Epsilon-level aliens was just an ordinary attack for him. He seemed to have endless energy in his body, and there was no need to worry about the exhaustion of energy or the emptiness of supernatural powers caused by the release of abilities. This is a powerful existence of more than 40,000 points, the Black Bishop. Boom, boom, boom. Tianhai City was not only flattened at this time, it was simply blown into a huge basin. Dozens of huge depressions appeared out of thin air on the earth, and all traces of civilization left by humans disappeared. This energy fluctuation finally made Zhang Yi and others completely unable to sit still. Because according to the indiscriminate attack method of the Hades gatekeeper, he will soon be able to directly wipe out the 36 Tiangangs arranged around Tianhai City with hard power. Once the trap is broken, their home advantage will be greatly weakened. Leaving the Hades gatekeeper in Tianhai City is their only possibility of winning. Take action. The ghost train appeared near the Hades gatekeeper again, this time behind him. However, in the brief moment when they appeared, the Hades gatekeeper's figure approached directly, like a ghost. Because the speed was too fast, overlapping afterimages were left on the retinas of Zhang Yi and others. The train did not even appear completely from the void, and the Hades gatekeeper's fist, which dominated the world, hit all of them without a whistle. A fist of black light emerged from his fist, and as the Hades gatekeeper's fist blasted out, it exploded directly in front of Zhang Yi and others. Zhang Yi and others met the eyes of the Hades gatekeeper. What kind of eyes were they? That kind of cold and ruthless eyes. Even people could not see the slightest killing intent. This is a kind of indifference of the superior to the humble, just like the high gods wanting to kill disobedient humans, or the emotion of people wanting to crush annoying insects quickly when facing them. Full power. Although Zhang Yi was extremely shocked, he had already made comprehensive preparations the moment he decided to show up to delay time. The net of the sword in the tree, the dimension gate of the 3,000 worlds, and the weakened ability of the time and space reverse flow all burst out in an instant. Not only him, Zhang Daowen, Li Changgong, Alexei, and others also burst out the most powerful energy in an instant. Their purpose was not to attack, but to block the attack of the Hades gatekeeper at this time. They could clearly feel that the Hades gatekeeper had lost patience with them and increased the power of his attack.
Bow.
The black light exploded directly from the Hades gatekeeper's fist, turning into a huge translucent energy sphere, which completely enveloped the ghost train in front of him. The terrifying energy began to devour everything within the range of the Star of Destruction indiscriminately. I am God's will. Break it. Li Changgong roared, desperately drawing his sword, using his own ability to wipe out all the forces attacking them. Alexei wielded two huge battle axes, and endless thunder surged wildly behind him. Thunder dragons roared and lingered around the ghost train. Their defense was broken in just a moment, and the layers of defense could not stop the full-strength attack of the Hades gatekeeper. At the critical moment, Ho-Tu in the carriage attacked again. The close-range bombardment of the Hades gatekeeper also made him fall into Ho-Tu's sixth reincarnation realm. Hungry Ghost Path. With a ghost train as the center, the surroundings suddenly turned into a huge dark area, and a vortex suddenly emerged from the train. The Hades gatekeeper only felt that his power suddenly began to fade, as if something had forcibly stripped his power from his body. His attack power was greatly weakened. The Hades gatekeeper instinctively dodged and retreated a sufficient distance. Although such means could not cause effective damage to him, his strong combat awareness still allowed him to quickly escape from the unfavorable environment. The 5 people joined forces to barely block the full-strength attack of the Hades gatekeeper. At this time, Zhang Yi and others were already sweating profusely. The arrogant look in Li Changgong's eyes also disappeared completely. A feeling of despair gradually emerged in his heart. How to fight such an opponent? The strength is completely not on the same level. Even if they struggled hard, they did not hurt the opponent at all. Not to mention delaying time. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they already needed to try their best. Only Alexei was still roaring, holding the huge battle axe with both hands, his eyes full of fighting spirit. Zhang Yi's eyes were gloomy, looking at the black shadow like a demon not far away. He didn't know what means to use to win. His most powerful star cannon and divine realm purification were unable to harm the opponent's body. Many of his trump cards, including Yang Xinxin, were difficult to use at this time. After all, he could not trap the opponent for even a millisecond. I don't have time to waste with you. The gatekeeper of the underworld had seen through the strength of this group of surface humans, and the last fear and caution in his heart completely disappeared. If this is all you have, then everything should be over. Chapter 1693. fake destiny. As the general of the Wulwan Empire, the gatekeeper of the underworld has a very strong fighting mindset. From the beginning, he did not use his full strength, not only because he was afraid of the mysterious rules in the underworld. More importantly, the battle between aliens, even if there is a certain gap in strength, may also overturn due to the characteristics of their abilities. So, in the 5 minutes from the beginning of the war to now, he has always maintained a cautious and restrained attitude, not firing at full power, and even made a certain defensive posture. However, now he has thoroughly understood the strength of the 5 people in front of him. The only one who poses a slight threat to him is the alien with a knife. But he can dodge that kind of extremely slow attack by closing his eyes. The gatekeeper of the underworld raised his hands to his chest. It's time to end this boring farce. A scornful smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. These guys don't really think that this clumsy maze can trap him, right? His hands are facing each other, and the black energy begins to gather in his palms. Those were black energy spheres, containing suffocating power. Even from a distance, Zhang Yi and the others could already feel the trembling. The black power, which was almost tangible, began to slowly merge and then turned into an even larger energy sphere. What is he going to do? Li Changgong said nervously. A decisive blow? No, Zhang Yi frowned. We have the protection of the ghost train, so it would be meaningless for him to attack us again. Unless he has figured out a way to capture our position. And facing this ability to travel infinitely in the void and unable to determine the direction, what is the best means of attack? The gatekeeper of the underworld gave his answer. The extremely powerful force condensed in his palms and turned into a pure black sphere the size of a football, as if the surrounding light could be swallowed by it. Zhang Yi and the others just took a look, and their souls were almost swallowed by the fear in their hearts. The gatekeeper of the underworld glanced at them lightly, and then his hands suddenly turned into claws and slammed hard on the energy sphere. Su Tianming. With the gatekeeper of Hades as the center, a vast force suddenly swept towards Liuhe, spreading in an instant with a posture of destroying everything. That force brought Zhang Yi the breath of death. For the first time in his life, he felt that the threat of death was so close to him. He tried his best and used all his defense methods to the limit to resist. Then he shouted, "Dai Sheng!" Dai Sheng was also sweating all over at this time, and he did not hesitate to activate the ability of Star Cluster to transfer the entire ghost train.
Boom.
The force instantly swept across their location and continued to spread in all directions in an unstoppable manner. The power was layered, like a tsunami, one wave after another, sweeping through the central area of Tianhai City and continued to spread around. Zhang Yi and his ghost train had just appeared from the void in another corner of Tianhai City, and this terrifying wave hit again. At this time, it was a full 50 kilometers away from the previous location. Zhang Yi and others changed color. The power of the Hades Gatekeeper's attack was comparable to that of the medium-sized Death of Love. Zhang Yi understood that Tianhai City was completely finished, but now is not the time to lament about such things, but to save his life. Li Changgong's face turned pale, and Shang Dawen and Ho Tu's eyes also showed solemnity. Only Zhang Yi didn't say a word. Between life and death, light flowed in his right eye, and he activated his most powerful defense ability.
Boom. Boom.
The movement in Tianhai City was so huge that the aliens in other battlefields in the distance could hear it clearly. The giant blade silver armor looked in the direction of Tianhai City. He smiled with satisfaction, and then looked at the Black Emperor, Qin Xuanba, on the opposite side. At this time, the two sides had experienced countless rounds of fierce fighting. As the same enhanced aliens, they fought each other in close combat. However, their attack and defense were very strong, so it was extremely difficult for anyone to kill the other. Giant Blade said, "Do you feel this power? This is the strength of the top existence of our Wulwan Empire. Are you desperate in your heart?" Chen Xuanba and Han Shanzhua's faces looked a little ugly. They could clearly feel that power even from a long distance. As Epsilon-level aliens, They certainly understood how powerful this power was, so powerful that it could wipe them out at will. Chun Xuanba pressed down the brim of his hat, his eyes as sharp as a saber. I believe in the comrades of the coalition. They can defend our motherland. He raised his fist towards Giant Blade and pointed his right index finger at his head arrogantly. And as a soldier, my mission is to eliminate you here. Giant Blade laughed, as if he heard some extremely funny joke, and laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha. Stupid human. Are you unwilling to accept reality because you are too desperate? Then, I will personally send you to face death. At this time, the Giant Blade, who already believed that they had won, became more confident and rushed towards Chun Xuanba like a fighter plane. The same situation happened on other battlefields at the same time. The fighting was going on in an extremely tragic way, and no one had any way to retreat. Liang Yu and Huahua were still on standby in the snow. Huahua's huge body lay on the snow, squinting its eyes. Feeling the power that erupted from Tianhai City, a trace of worry flashed in its eyes. But considering Zhang Yi's strength, it blinked slowly. The master never needs it to worry. Maybe Zhang Yi's strength is not the strongest, and he always faces enemies stronger than him, but he is never lost. Because Zhang Yi never puts himself in danger. Huahua deeply believes this. Liang Yu relies on Huahua's body. He held Longming in his arms. The current Longming was no longer the adamantium weapon. After many improvements by Liu Karen, it was now a dark silver weapon with dragon patterns on the blade. After countless killings, it drank the blood of too many strong men. Even at this time, Liang Yu could feel a resonance with it. Her eyes were closed, and she was in a state of meditation, keeping her body and mind at the best level. The time is coming. As a mobile force, they will join the battlefield at the most intense moment of the battle. At that time, they will be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. Chapter 1694. The Forces Standing on the Sidelines. The powerful energy fluctuations that erupted in Tianhai City attracted the attention of various forces around the world at this time. Although many forces did not directly participate in this war, their eyes were all on the battlefield of Huashu country. Since the end of the world, humans have directly faced underground civilizations, and the largest-scale war on the surface has occurred. This war will expose many problems. For example, the true strength of Huashu country. For example, how powerful the underground civilization is. These are extremely important information, so they would rather stay up late at night to keep a close eye on the battle here. Of course, it is still daytime on the other side of the planet. Countless satellites are broadcasting the battle situation here in real time. They may not be able to clearly see everything that happens on the battlefield because these are not allowed by the three giants of Huashu country, Columbia and Fremons. But they only need to survey the energy fluctuations here, and they can use this information to judge the basic situation of the battle. The terrifying energy that erupted in Tianhai City is comparable to a small or medium-sized god of love and death. Such power made the Pope of the Junjing Church, Alexander X, who was in Beidougang at this time, look solemn. Have those heretics in the underground world become so powerful? If they continue to invade, it may affect the great plan of the Junjing Church. Alexander X wrinkled his hooked nose, and a look of dissatisfaction appeared on his wrinkled face. Behind him, Cardinal Arnold Olive held the holy book and said respectfully, "But now, it seems too late to support. The battle between the top aliens will end soon. Even if they fly over from the back of the planet on the fastest plane, I am afraid that it will be useless after arriving at the scene.
It is even possible to get themselves involved."
Oh, that's also unavoidable. Originally, I just wanted to teach them a lesson, but I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Alexander X rubbed his eyebrows, and suddenly he smiled. But I don't believe that a country of Huashu's level will be easily destroyed. A mysterious island in the ocean. At this time, a blizzard was raging outside the window, and a blazing fire was burning under the fireplace in the house. Montesquieu, the president of the Tong organization, sat on a chair with a thick blanket on his legs, listening to his subordinates' reports. The king, Mawide Brat, described the abnormal energy fluctuations in Tianhai City to him and expressed his concerns. Both Ho Tu and Hun Dun are our targets of investigation, but in this battle, the enemies they face are too powerful. It is even possible that they will fall in this battle. Brat looked at Montesquieu cautiously, hoping that this mentor could make a wise decision at this time. Should we take action? Montesquieu lowered his head and rubbed his rough fingers. Perhaps because the fireplace had been burning for too long, the air was a little dry. No, it's not the time for us to take action yet. Once we expose our strength to the sun, those lackeys will not let us have an easy time. He showed a mocking smile on his face, full of contempt for the black-legged he mentioned, but not too worried. But if they really lose, it will be a big blow to our profanation plan, Brat said with some worry. Montesquieu slowly closed his eyes and opened them after a long time. His eyes did not become cloudy due to his age, but instead exuded a wise light. They will not fail so easily. As one of the most powerful human countries on this planet, if it is destroyed so easily, then human beings themselves should disappear from this planet. Mawide Brat was silent for a few seconds after hearing this, and finally stopped talking. Because he felt that Montesquieu was right. Even Huashu country could be defeated by the underground civilization, so who else could withstand the doomsday that would only be more cruel? Only a mountain range away from Huashu country is the most populous country in the world today, Bharata. Of course, they also paid close attention to everything that happened in Huashu country. At the beginning of the war, Huashu country had asked them for help, hoping that they could send a group of aliens to support them. But it was directly rejected by the high-level officials of Bharata, led by the 8 tribes. Originally, due to the special relationship between the two countries and the unclear historical origins, Huashu Kingdom did not take it to heart, but just kept it in mind. But Bharata was quite concerned about it, because for many years, they have been eager to surpass Huashu Kingdom and become the most powerful country in Asia. Therefore, this invasion of the Uluan Empire became an excellent opportunity in their eyes. Bharata Alliance. At this time, the entire country had already been torn apart, and powerful forces in various places were divided and formed a loose alliance. However, like the 6 major regions of Huashu Kingdom and many states of Colombia, here is a top-level power institution formed by high-level aliens. Muna City is the core of this power institution. Bajaola Temple in Muna City among them, most of the leaders of the 8 Immortals, representing the most powerful organization of Bharata, gather here today. Except for Garuda, led by Gao Chongkong. All the members were present. Anand Sharma, the strongest man of Bharata with the title of Indra, was naked on his upper body and feet, wearing sacred traditional ethnic costumes and sitting cross-legged on the high platform of the temple. One of his strong legs hung down along the high platform, and his appearance was as solemn as the real emperor of the gods in the mural. On both sides below, the leaders of the 8 Immortals also sat cross-legged on the cushions, as if they were all waiting for some news. From outside the temple, an alien ran over in a hurry and knelt in front of everyone. Emperor of Heaven. Just got the latest information. The battle situation in Tianhai City of Huashu Kingdom has intensified. The strength of the strong men of the underground civilization is extremely powerful, and the aliens of Huashu Kingdom may not be able to hold on. Hearing this news, everyone on the 8 Immortals showed a happy smile on their faces, looked at each other, and nodded with satisfaction. Indra slowly opened his tightly closed eyes. Oh, I didn't expect the underground civilization to be so powerful. But it's good this way. As long as Huashu Kingdom suffers enough blows, they will give up the throne of number 1 in Asia. From now on, our Bharata will surpass them and become the patron saint of this area. He raised his arms high, his eyes full of passion and piety. Chapter 1695 Ambitious. After Emperor Shi Tian finished speaking, one of the leaders of the 8 tribes below suddenly spoke up. Huashu Kingdom has suffered such a blow this time, and it is very likely to be directly destroyed. Even if it survives, it will definitely be seriously injured and unable to bear the responsibility of the Eastern Great Power. He looked at everyone and tried his best to persuade them. Now it is time for us, Barada, to show our strength. The person who spoke was Yaksha, one of the leaders of the 8 tribes. His words were recognized by everyone, and even Emperor Shirtian looked down at him. Yaksha, what do you want to say? Yaksha stood up, bowed to Emperor Shirtian, and then said, since the fall of Huasu Kingdom is an inevitable event, there is no need for us to let them continue to occupy that huge territory and resources. So I suggest that we should take the initiative to help them take over the areas that they are no longer able to protect. As soon as these words came out, the faces of everyone at the scene became subtle. It has never been a good thing to have a powerful neighboring country next to them, and surpassing Huasu Kingdom has always been the dream of their Barada people. Indra's face showed a touch of emotion. Oh, at this time, they are fighting against the underground civilization head-on, and it's not good for us to do this, right? Yaksha said, Emperor, it's not like that. The southwest of Huashu country is a very mysterious land. There is a mysterious ancient civilization buried underground. We sent people to explore it before, and the conclusion we got is that there are endless treasures underground. That is the treasure of all mankind. Huashu country cannot monopolize it. Not to mention that they are no longer able to protect it now. Isn't it natural for us to protect the treasure of mankind? Indra laughed after hearing this. He nodded. I think what Yaksha said makes a lot of sense. All of this is to fulfill our responsibility as a world power. He looked down and said to Yaksha and the alien sitting in another seat, Yaksha, Maharaja, you lead your people to the southwest of Huashu country. Help them and protect the treasure of human civilization. Yaksha and Maharaja immediately bowed in front of Indra. I will follow your orders, Emperor. In the entire temple, almost everyone's face was filled with fanaticism. After so many years, they finally had the opportunity to take advantage of the weakness of Huashu Kingdom and step on it hard. However, some people in the crowd also showed worried expressions on their faces. However, facing Emperor Shirtian and others who were determined to achieve great things, and considering the rising national sentiment in Barada, they still chose to shut up obediently. Tian High City. The gatekeeper of the underworld swept across with a move of Su Tianming, completely flattening the central area of Tian High City, turning it into a huge valley, as if it had been bombed by the god of death of love. The strong storm swept to the surrounding areas with Tian High City as the center. Fortunately, the 36 Tian gang were far away from the center of the explosion. Otherwise, if a trace of this power swept over them, they would be directly blasted into ashes on the spot. But even so, the terrifying power still made them terrified. At this moment, after the Hades gatekeeper used the fake destiny, he seemed to realize that he had not destroyed the maze or killed the people on the ghost train. This made him feel a little confused. It shouldn't be like this. He was fully confident in his own strength, and it would definitely not be ineffective. So his brain quickly fell into thinking. The tactic they adopted against me was to use the fog that could disrupt my perception so that I could not leave this area smoothly, then use the ability of the space system to manipulate the train as a means of transportation to launch a surprise attack on me. My fake destiny can instantly sweep across a large area around. It can be seen that their space shuttle ability can reach a longer distance, or they have other means to block my attack. He crossed his arms and supported his chin with one hand. Continuing to delay with them like this will only make it more disadvantageous for me. Oh, forget it. The Hades gatekeeper did not intend to waste time anymore. So he chose to close his eyes directly. If the eyes and feelings can deceive people, then just close your eyes so that you will not be misled by the 5 senses. After he randomly selected a direction, he flew over there without hesitation. In the void, the ghost train reappeared. Seeing the huge deep pit on the ground, Zhang Yi and his companions were still in shock. At this moment, Daishin gave them a hasty reminder in the communication channel. Oh no! That guy seems to have found a way to escape from the 8 diagrams. Because in his mind, the monster trapped in the array actually flew quickly in a straight line towards the northwest of Tian High City. Zhang Yi chuckled. Forget it, This is also within expectations. The so-called maze is just a trick. Once the loopholes are discovered, it will easily become ineffective. They have delayed the gatekeeper of the underworld for nearly 8 minutes, and the 36 heavenly gangs have perfectly completed their mission. But what should we do next? Li Changgong said anxiously. In our home court, we can't gain an advantage with all kinds of arrangements. Once he leaves Tianhai City, what can we do to fight him? He can't leave. Zhang Yi interrupted him directly. Li Changgong and Shang Dawen, who wanted to say something, looked at Zhang Yi with surprised eyes. Why did Zhang Yi speak so tough all of a sudden? Zhang Yi glanced at them and said coldly, "He is a gatekeeper of the underworld, very powerful and very smart, but my people are not just for show. He can see through our abilities and formations, so won't we take advantage of this time to collect intelligence on him?" It turned out that Yang Xinxin had obtained the analysis results through the intelligence agencies of various regions. The reason why the previous shot of the god of death of love was blocked by the gatekeeper of the underworld was because they used a special weapon to block the impact of the god of death of love. After hearing this, Li Changgong frowned and said, "So what? That only means that we can't use the god of death of love to kill him." "No, that's not the case," Zhang Yi said to Dai Sheng. "Don't let him leave Tianhai City, otherwise, we really can't win. Now, catch up with him immediately." Chapter 1690, 6:30 seconds. Li Changgong cursed in his heart. "Chaos, are you really crazy?" But now they have no other choice but to fight to the death. When the gatekeeper of Hades leaves Tianhai City, I am afraid that no one can stop him even for a moment. After Zhang Yi finished speaking, he looked at Li Changgong and the others again. His eyes drooped slightly, as if he wanted to penetrate the carriage and look at the girl sitting in the carriage. "Next, I will be away for a while. 30 seconds, help me hold him for 30 seconds. Li Changgong almost jumped up. Now Zhang Yi is the main force of frontal defense. If he leaves, who can stop the attack of the gatekeeper of Hades? Shang Dawen also asked in confusion. "Chaos. What do you want to do?" "There is no time to explain to you. If you want to win, do as I say," Zhang Yi said in an anxious tone. According to the speed of the gatekeeper of Hades, he will leave the area of Tianhai City in less than a minute. At that time, the execution of the plan will be extremely difficult. Alexei said nothing. He has always been a man of action and rarely speaks. Li Changgong's expression was a little distorted. He even suspected that Zhang Yi was planning to abandon them and escape. But it didn't make sense to think about it. If Zhang Yi really wanted to escape, he could do it at any time.
There was no need to drag them down now.
Several people's thoughts turned over and over, but time waited for no one. At this time, Ho Tu spoke. "Do as he says." It turned out that Yang Xinxin had communicated with Ho Tu before, and only she could convince Ho Tu in the shortest time. Seeing that Ho Tu had expressed her position, Shang Dawen naturally had no opinion. At this time, Li Changgong's attitude was obviously unimportant. Dai Sheng directly activated his ability, and the ghost train instantly appeared in front of the speeding gatekeeper of the underworld. The moment the ghost train appeared, Zhang Yi's figure disappeared directly from the train. Li Changgong's face was a little distorted, but now he could only bite the bullet and fight. The road of the gatekeeper of the underworld was blocked, and he had to open his eyes to face the enemy in front of him. This directly led to the interruption of his previous route, and he was placed in the Bagua formation again. Looking at the humans who dared to stop him, the gatekeeper of the underworld was full of condescending disdain. He was too lazy to talk nonsense and directly launched a virtual destiny attack, covering the ghost train in an instant. Ho Tu's eyes suddenly opened, and for the first time, a sharp light burst out from her dark eyes. The 6 reincarnations unfolded around the car body. Black Sun, Deku, Yueying, and Mietang, for Epsilon-level souls were summoned. Countless hell souls burned with hellfire and crawled out from the depths of the underworld, roaring and crawling towards the gatekeeper of the underworld. And the space-based weapons that had been hanging high in the sky, in this battle, burst out their power for the first time. 6 military satellites, The sun wings were all spread out, and at this most critical moment, they shot out energy rays that penetrated the sky. The sky, the earth, the huge power all gathered in one place, and the only target was the arrogant marshal of the Wulwan Empire. The gatekeeper of Hades was suddenly shocked. Although he knew that humans had such a powerful weapon from the sky when the battle started, he didn't care about human weapons at all. Secondly, he had been fighting for a long time without using such weapons, which made him feel a little careless. He didn't expect that this time, Ho-Tu launched all her strength as soon as she attacked, and pointed 6 energy cannons of space-based weapons directly at his head. Boom! Countless kinds of mixed energies collided, and a huge mushroom cloud rose directly in the northwest area of Tianhai City. Ho-Tu's 6 reincarnations were almost completely destroyed by this attack, and all her summons were completely destroyed. Li Changgong, Alexei, and Shang Dawen tried their best to resist the force attacking the ghost train. But when the majestic force hit the train, it was like a boxer hitting a sandbag with all his strength, directly twisting it out of shape. It didn't know what material it was made of, but it obviously had super-era technology. Otherwise, an ordinary train would be completely destroyed by the aftermath of the battle. Even so, it was still deformed by the explosion and thrown away fiercely. Shang Dawen came to Ho-Tu in an instant and deployed a telekinetic barrier to block her. Ho-Tu fell to the floor, leaning against the carriage with her head down, and a trickle of blood slowly flowed from her mouth. This strongest person in Shengjing district, who was called the foundation of Huaxi state by countless people, was injured so badly for the first time. Li Changgong and Alexei were even worse. They were thrown away fiercely and rolled around in the carriage like a ball. The power of the gatekeeper of the underworld almost crushed Li Changgong's internal organs. He now felt like a rag thrown into a washing machine and stirred wildly. Cough, cough, cough. Big mouthfuls of blood spurted out of Li Changgong's mouth, and he felt that he was about to die. Zhang. Gurgle. Zhang fuck your uncle. Why don't you come quickly? Blood and curses spurted out of Li Changgong's mouth. At this time, the gatekeeper of Hades. Even after withstanding Ho-Tu's all-out attack, he still stood intact in the sky. He looked up at the cloudless sky. The weapons above the sky made him feel a little interesting and actually gave him a sense of crisis. If he hadn't burst out all his strength, he might have been injured. At the moment, everyone in the ghost train was injured. Daishin was not in the carriage, but driving at the front of the car, so he was only affected by the residual power. However, even so, he was seriously injured and dying, and fainted completely. His coma caused the ghost train to be unable to shuttle between space nodes, but fell miserably on the snow, like a dead dragon turning over more than a dozen times on the ground. The gatekeeper of the underworld looked over. It seems that it can be declared over, he said, raising his right hand. Just when everyone was about to despair, Zhang Yi finally appeared on the train. Don't resist this power, let's go. Zhang Yi's voice echoed in everyone's ears. The Star of Destruction of the Hades gatekeeper had locked their position, but Zhang Yi opened the dimensional gate like a zipper. At the moment when the attack was about to hit him, he led the entire train into the dimensional gate. The moment the gap of the dimensional gate closed, the attack of the Hades gatekeeper destroyed the entire area of dozens of kilometers. Chapter 1697 True Absolute Defense. Zhang Yi and others dodged the attack of the Hades gatekeeper, which made the Hades gatekeeper's eyes flash with surprise. How can you escape? Just as he was about to leave the fog of Tianhai City and start a killing spree, a very strong sign of death suddenly emerged from the depths of his heart. It was a long time since he had seen it. He had long forgotten the premonition of death. As a high-level alien and an existence close to God in the Wulwan Empire, he should not have such a feeling again. The Hades gatekeeper instinctively wanted to escape from the current area, but at this time he was still in the maze and had already lost his previous direction. In the moment of his hesitation, an extremely terrifying force, accompanied by a dazzling light, rose from the depths of the earth 500 meters below his feet. The maze of Tianhai City lost its effect at this moment because the overly powerful force, like detonating 100,000 stars, completely illuminated all the areas around Tianhai City. The aliens on several battlefields fell into a state of temporary blindness. Even Deng Shintong had to use the characteristics of his ability to barely see the scope of almost the entire area of Tianhai City. A huge hot sphere erupted, constantly expanding and rising, and finally exploded, rising into the sky to form a terrifying super-large mushroom cloud. Until this moment, the roar that instantly shattered the eardrums sounded from the earth. Boom! The emergency mechanism of the combat uniform immediately adopted the noise reduction function to offset this ultra-high decibel sound and prevent people's ears and even internal organs from being shattered. The representatives of forces from all over the world who were observing the battlefield here also had extremely solemn expressions. Love, death. Super large equivalent. But the cardinal of the Junjing Church frowned. When did they launch it? The launch of a love, death was too noisy. Basically, as long as you open the launch silo, satellites from all over the world can detect it. It is almost impossible to detonate a love, death silently. But right now, this kind of thing has indeed happened on the land of Huaxiu. In Shengjing District, Meng Yuanjun stood up suddenly, staring at the big screen in front of him. Everyone in the entire combat command center was at a loss. Such a terrifying explosion. Even Ho Tu and others could not resist it at all, and they were afraid that they would be burned to ashes. Only Liang Yu and others understood that as long as Zhang Yi was there, they would not be in any danger. Is absolute defense really a joke? It may be like this in the past, but since Zhang Yi mastered the ability of escape into the void, he can at least maintain his true invincibility for more than a minute. Hide yourself in another world, completely isolated from the real world. As long as he does not appear, then no one can kill him. The earth-shaking explosion. The gatekeeper of the underworld is in the center of the explosion. At this time, just as Liang Yu imagined, Zhang Yi took everyone into the other-dimensional space. The time flow rate of the other-dimensional space is extremely slow, but people's thinking does not belong to this world. So Shang Dawen and others who entered it for the first time felt a clear sense of separation. They seemed to be immobilized, their bodies were almost unable to move, but their brains could clearly feel everything. This feeling was undoubtedly particularly painful, and even Zhang Yi, who had been trained for a long time, could not bear this kind of mental torture for a long time. Li Changgong even had a fear in his heart. When he fought with Zhang Yi, he realized that he must not break into Zhang Yi's dimension door. Now he knew that if he really came in, he would either die or live a life worse than death. Although they were both space-related aliens, Zhang Yi's abilities were much more comprehensive than his. Li Changgong couldn't help but feel a strong sense of jealousy in his heart. But when he thought that Zhang Yi also had the ability of the time system, this jealousy became extremely weak. The gap between people can be so big that it is unimaginable. When your ability is only a little better than that of the people around you, they will envy you, resent you, and always think about your downfall one day, or that they will surpass you. But when your strength is strong enough, so strong that it makes people despair, the jealousy in his heart will disappear and turn into admiration. Zhang Yi had no way to control the mental state of these people at this time. He couldn't communicate with several people here, so he just left them alone. It's better to endure torture than to be killed by the god of love outside. Tianhai City is completely finished after this battle. This god of love was requested by Zhang Yi from Zhuzheng in advance. It can be said that it is the god of love with the largest yield that humans can make so far. In history, there was a huge monster called the Tsar Bomb. However, this weapon can only exist as a face-saving project to show off muscles because of its huge size and heavy weight, but it is actually difficult to use missiles. However, Zhang Yi doesn't need that kind of thing. He only needs to bury this god of love in the underground of Tianhai City and then wait for an appropriate time to detonate it. This plan is a decision he made a long time ago. The top leaders of various regions also know that once they find that they can't beat the alien troops of the Wulwan Empire, they will inevitably use the god of love. But they didn't expect Zhang Yi to do it in this way. The god of love carried by the missile. If the human technology can detect the god of death, then the Wulwan Empire, which is no less than human civilization, or even higher, can certainly detect it. The fact that the previous god of death of love was accurately intercepted illustrates this problem. However, Yang Xinshin asked the various regions to survey the energy fluctuations at the scene through satellites and found that it was because they used a special weapon to offset the energy of the god of death of love. From this, Zhang Yi can at least understand one thing. The gatekeeper of the underworld itself cannot stop the large-yield god of death of love. If a special weapon is used, then, as long as the opponent is not given time to react, the god of death of love will suddenly explode, and there is a chance to cause a miraculous effect. Everything is that simple. When he realized this, what he did was to quickly transfer the prepared super-large-yield god of death of love. Ho Tu and others attracted the attention of the gatekeeper of the underworld on the front. At this time, suddenly detonate the god of death of love, and then use the ability of escape into the void to save everyone. This is Zhang Yi's plan. Zhang Yi closed his eyes, and his mind had deduced the next battle plan countless times. Chapter 1698 Mobile Force. The time in the extra-dimensional space is very long, enough for him to plan every step of the next action. The best result is, of course, that the gatekeeper of the underworld is directly killed by the god of death of love. Then they will directly declare victory in this battle. If the gatekeeper of the underworld still retains some combat power, he will inevitably suffer heavy damage. Judging from the current strength of 28,000 points of supernatural power index, Zhang Yi, who is in good condition, plus several seriously injured companions around him, also has a chance to kill the opponent. At least he can force the opponent to escape. But if the opponent can even block the outbreak of the god of death of love this time, sorry, Zhang Yi will take everyone and run away directly. Knowing that it is impossible, there is no need to do it. More than a minute is long enough. Zhang Yi endured to the limit of his heart and opened the exit of the dimensional door. Because this explosion is not a moment, but will continue to release super high temperatures and extremely strong radiation. Fortunately, they have made preparations in advance and understand that the god of death of love may be used, so the combat uniforms have the function of isolating radiation. As if Tianhai City had been burned by a fire, the air was so hot that it was distorted. A huge and charred figure half knelt on the ground, one hand tightly covering his chest. The once arrogant gatekeeper of the underworld struggled to stand up. But such a simple action made him spit out a large pool of blood. Now he can no longer see his original appearance. His whole body is like charcoal, miserable, but as ugly and terrifying as the evil spirits of hell. A gap was cut in the void, and a white palm opened the crack of the dimension. Zhang Yi walked out of the void, followed by a ghost train that was almost destroyed. Ho Tu and others were not in a very good mental state. After all, they experienced this almost sealed state for the first time, and from the perspective of spiritual senses, they could not move for several months. After Zhang Yi appeared, he still stared at the huge charred monster in the distance with caution. The vines of the sword in the tree in his hand swayed unsteadily and could form a net for defense at any time. But after just one look at him, the sword in the tree in Zhang Yi's hand suddenly exploded. The silver vines gathered together and turned into a sharp silver spike, rushing straight towards the gatekeeper of the Hades. He has always been cautious, but if he delays, it may give the other party a chance to recover, and Zhang Yi dare not gamble. Facing Zhang Yi's attack, the gatekeeper of the Hades suddenly turned his head back, his eyes red with a fierce killing intent. He raised his right fist and suddenly smashed it at the silver spike. Swish! The sword in the tree pierced his shoulder, and a large piece of blue blood splashed out. His fist was still a few seconds slower and failed to block Zhang Yi's attack. Zhang Yi's mouth curled up slightly. Sure enough, even if you can survive the explosion of the god of death of love, you have already exhausted your strength. The sword in the tree shrank and turned into a long sword more than 2 meters long. Zhang Yi's eyes became ferocious, and the dark power behind him surged like a tide. The huge vortex of the void spun behind him like a life disk, and the powerful force spread throughout his body and finally gathered on the sword of the tree sword. The sword body was pitch black, and the surging power was concentrated at a point at the tip of the sword.
Boom.
The sound of thunder sounded, and Alexei was the first to recover among the few people. He raised 2 battle axes, triggered thunder, and stood beside Zhang Yi to attack at the same time. The 2 people's attacks were launched together, shooting at the seriously injured and dying guy in the distance. Boom! The violent explosion sounded again on the land of Tianhai City that had been bombed into scorched earth. The explosion of the god of death of love marked that the war had officially entered the final stage. Whether successful or not, they must attack with all their strength. Liang Yu and Huahua, who had been on standby for a long time, no longer had any hesitation. They were all in the communication channel and knew the situation on the battlefields everywhere.
Both
Sides were well prepared this time, and it was difficult for high-level aliens to kill each other, so the situation on all battlefields was stalemate. And this new force of theirs has to wait until now to play the greatest effect. "Let's go, Huahuas," Liang Yu said.
Meow.
Huahua stood up, and a pair of wings spread out directly on its huge body. Liang Yu turned over and jumped onto its back. Huahua took off and flew far away according to the instructions given by the top leaders. Their goal was very clear. A few minutes later, Huahua flapped its wings and landed in the neighboring Jianghua city. This is the battlefield where Qinshuanba and Hanshanzhua are. The enemy opposite them is the combination of the old rivals Giant Blade and Frost. The last time the 2 sides did not decide the winner, this time it was also a close fight. When Liang Yu and Huahua arrived, Qinshuanba and Giant Blade were already covered in blood, and their combat uniforms and armor were completely shattered. A hideous and terrifying cut appeared on Qinshuanba's waist, as if he was almost cut off by a knife. Although he did not see the battle, Liang Yu could imagine how dangerous this battle was. Seeing Liang Yu and Huahua arriving, the Giant Blade and Frost changed color instantly. "Reinforcements?" Han Shanzhua breathed a sigh of relief. "You are finally here. That's great. Otherwise we might really die here today." Although Huahua and Liang Yu are only white chariot-level aliens, in this situation, they will completely tilt the balance in full state. Liang Yu glanced at the 4 wounded aliens, slowly pulled out the dragon roar in her hand, and walked to the center of the battlefield. "You'd better take a rest. Leave the next battle to me." She could see that Qinshuanba's injuries were very terrible. If the fight continued, the opponent would have a chance to replace him if he fought desperately. Hearing this, Qinshuanba raised a cold smile at the corner of his mouth. "Hey, woman," he sneered. "Are you looking down on me?" Huahua turned around and growled at him. Liang Yu didn't even turn his head, but said lightly, "It is the wisest choice to minimize casualties on the battlefield. There is no meaning in the courage of a common man." Qinshuanba smiled playfully when he heard this. "But you'd better be careful. Even if the guy in front of you is seriously injured, a beast is still a beast. Especially an injured beast, which is the most dangerous. Underestimate me?" Liang Yu raised his eyebrows. "Sorry, I never underestimate my opponent. But don't underestimate me too much. Choosing this battlefield to provide support first is not without consideration. As a reinforcement-type alien, Liang Yu's choice to fight the seriously injured Giant Blade is the wisest choice." Chapter 1699 follows suit. Liang Yu and Huahua replaced Qinshuanba and Han Shanzhua and boarded the battlefield. Although the silver armor and the black and white commanders in front of them were both damaged in battle, Liang Yu did not dare to be careless. She knew that once this seriously injured and dying guy started to fight desperately, he would burst out extremely powerful power in a short period of time like a last gasp. No negligence is allowed. Sure enough, the Giant Blade held the strange-shaped huge scimitar tightly in his hand and stared at Liang Yu. Although he did not speak, his eyes were full of murderous intent. Liang Yu swept the long knife in her hand, and a black mind quickly rotated around her body with her feet as the center. The endless black air rose into the air like a smoke screen, covering the battlefield. Liang Yu did not choose to approach the giant blade, but aimed the long knife in her hand at him and raised it diagonally. A clean and neat knife swept out, and a huge black blade light was like a sky curtain hanging down, aiming at the giant blade and quickly attacking. The giant blade snorted coldly, raised the giant blade in his hand and blocked it directly in front of him.
Bang.
He directly chopped off Liang Yu's attack with a knife, but Liang Yu was not in a hurry, always keeping a certain distance from him, and then kept swinging the long knife. She was using the means of long-range attack to test the remaining power of the giant blade at this time, judge his combat status, and decide how to fight next. On the other side, Huahua's huge eyes stared at the black and white leader. The corners of its mouth were raised like a human, and its long beard trembled. Liang Yu still needs to be cautious when facing the giant blade. But Huahua had fought with this kind of black and white leader before, and was very clear about the opponent's strength level. Even if the opponent was in his prime, it could fight. What's more, the current black and white leader was already scarred in the battle with Han Shanzhua and Qin Xuanba. The alien with frost attributes was restrained by Han Shanzhua's flames. If there was no giant blade to protect him, he would even be killed by Han Shanzhua. So now Huahua is just eating a side dish when dealing with him. However, Huahua had been with Zhang Yi for a long time, and he also understood the principle that a lion will use all its strength to fight a rabbit. It opened its bloody mouth, and a great energy gathered in its mouth, and finally turned into a red high-energy particle cannon. After aiming at the black and white commander, an energy cannon directly turned into a red beam, and shot out fiercely. The black and white commander was furious. He wanted to dodge, but his physical condition was too poor at this time, and Huahua's high-energy particle cannon was fired at a very fast speed, so that he could only condense a large amount of frost in front of him, turning it into a huge iceberg, trying to block this attack. Boom! The iceberg could not stop Huahua's high-energy particle cannon at all, and a huge hole was directly pierced through it, and then the energy hit the black and white commander's body fiercely. Ah! He screamed, and his whole body was blown away, and a lot of blood flowed down his injured torso. "I'll kill him first, and then come to support you." Huahua used the translation tool to talk to Liang Yu. Now its wisdom is no less than that of humans, so there is no problem in communication. Okay. Liang Yu did not show off her bravery. As the saying goes, a red man becomes red when he is near a red man, and a black man becomes black when he is near a black man. Liang Yu was a reckless man who only knew how to use force at first, but in the past few years, she has become more stable after following Zhang Yi. So even though she knew that Zhu Ren was seriously injured, she did not give him any chance to counterattack before his death, and she kept attacking him from a distance with black thoughts. Zhu Ren's heart sank at this time. He saw his men being chased by the huge cat. But now, if he went to help, he would leave his back to the enemy. The current situation is very difficult, not to mention that Qin Xuanba and Han Shanzhua still have the strength to fight. He can only put all his hopes on Tianhai City. Now, only if their general wins can he save him. But Zhu Ren felt uneasy. Why has the marshal not solved those human aliens for so long? There was no time for him to think. Huahua roared and rushed directly towards the wounded black and white commander. Holding a huge scimitar, the giant blade chose to take the initiative to attack after blocking Liang Yu's attacks again and again. He wanted to gather his remaining little strength and burst out a fatal blow to kill the human female in front of him in seconds. Only in this way can he fight for a glimmer of hope. But Liang Yu had seen through his thoughts and didn't give him such a chance at all. The giant blade was very fast. It didn't take a moment to rush to Liang Yu's vicinity. He picked up the huge battle blade in his hand and chopped it. That kind of powerful oppression was enough to move Liang Yu even on a seriously injured and dying alien. Unload force. Liang Yu chose to focus on defense at this time, exerting the force unloading of Tai Chi, pulling the defense to the extreme, instead of fighting against the giant blade that was fighting for his life. The battle between the two enhanced aliens made a deafening roar, and the ground under their feet could not bear their power at all and kept breaking. However, Liang Yu used the profound meaning of martial arts at this time, and did not collide head-on with the giant blade, which also made his strength useless. There is room for development. In terms of skills, Liang Yu is a real master. She knows that the giant blade has few opportunities, maybe only one strike, so as long as she doesn't reveal any flaws, she will be safe. A moment later, Hua came back with the bloody body of the black and white commander and showed it to the giant blade in a show of strength, and then clicked. He suddenly bit his body in half and swallowed it into his stomach. The giant blade's heart sank immediately because Hua joined the battle immediately afterwards. With the help of Hua, Liang Yu's battle became easier. One person and one cat have a tacit understanding, constantly using long-range attack methods to consume the giant blade's physical strength. This made Han Shanzhua, who was resting and watching the battle in the distance, look constipated. You really follow whoever you are around, and learn from whoever you are. He was too familiar with this kind of wretched and maddening style of play, which was Zhang Yi's style. Obviously, he has an overwhelming advantage in terms of strength, but he has to use the most stable way to slowly torture his opponent to death. In simple terms, it was to kick the cripple's good leg hard. This made Han Shanzhua and Chen Xuanba grit their teeth. Chen Xuanba didn't like this way of fighting, but he had to admit that it was indeed stable. In the end, the giant blade fell down. Liang Yu and Hua didn't give him the chance to fight to the death that he hoped to find. The man and the cat boiled the frog in warm water, exhausting his last strength. In the end, Liang Yu chopped him more than 100 times and wore him to death. Chapter 1701 Step Ahead. Liang Yu was unceremoniously going to collect the origin power of the giant blade. Han Shanzhua's eyes widened. Hey, sister. It's not appropriate for you to do this. He pointed at Hua, whose mouth was full of blood. Your cat has eaten one, so you won't leave us any of this origin? Liang Yu thought of Zhang Yi's instructions and said, we are just keeping these temporarily. When the war is over, you can go to chaos to discuss how to distribute them. Liang Yu was not good at arguing with others. Zhang Yi considered this and asked her to put everything on her head. At this time, a war had just ended, and Han Shanzhua and Chen Xuanba had no energy to argue with Liang Yu. What's more, the crisis has not been completely resolved yet, and they still need to work together. So Chen Xuanba gave Han Shanzhua a look, and the two did not care about it anymore. Liang Yu and Hua also kept going and continued to rush to the next battlefield. Soon, they came to the place where the funeral master and Zhong Yu were. But when they arrived here, they only saw the funeral master healing Zhong Yu. Seeing this, Liang Yu saluted the funeral master. Master, have you solved the enemy? I didn't expect that you have improved your strength after not seeing you for so many days. The funeral master, who left the southwest region, no longer had that kind of endless mind power blessing. I thought he came here just to help, but I didn't expect that he was the one with the best results. The funeral master smiled and shook his head. You are wrong. It's not that we defeated the enemy. It's that at the last moment, someone showed up and helped us eliminate the enemy. Liang Yu frowned slightly when he heard this, his eyes full of surprise. Someone got ahead of us? But I remember that there are no extra Epsilon-level aliens in the coalition. Zhong Yu looked at Liang Yu and said in a deep voice, yes, there is one more. Who is he? Liang Yu asked suspiciously. Zhong Yu's injuries were not light at this time. Although he was injected with drugs, his weak lips turned pale. He said slowly, I don't know her, but she is a girl with long hair, no older than 18 years old. Just when we were fighting to the last moment, I thought I was going to be killed, but she suddenly rushed into the battlefield. In an incredible way, she killed the aliens of the Wulwan Empire. Incredibles? Liang Yu was more and more confused. And you said it was a girl? Is she from Huaxiu? Definitely. Zhong Yu nodded affirmatively. Her ability is very strange. I have never heard of it. Although she won by sneak attack while we were fighting the aliens of the Wulwan Empire. But in just a few seconds, she actually showed 4 completely different abilities at the same time. Zhong Yu now thinks about what happened just now. His eyes are full of complexity. She used illusion to make Yanma lose consciousness, and then sealed it with an ice coffin. Then she used thunder to shatter the storm barrier. It was just a brief moment, and she defeated them with the ability to restrain them. It's so terrible. Liang Yu was more and more frightened as she listened. She and Huahua looked at each other, and both thought of the same person. The leader of the Baishui cult, Yuan Kongya. However, Yuan Kongya had died long ago. They still remembered that the Jiangnan district used the remaining cells of Yuan Kongya to copy her. That is Zhu Zheng's goddaughter, Zhu Yu. Now think about it, the sudden appearance of the Epsilon-level alien can only be her. She has been Epsilon for a long time. Liang Yu's heart was extremely shocked. Zhu Zheng is indeed cunning and treacherous. He has such a killer in his hand, and has not used it until today. Then, the reason why Zhu Yu had not shown up and had to wait until today to pick the fruit was obviously that his purpose was to take the opportunity to harvest the origin of a large number of top-level aliens and then let Zhu Yu grow up. Liang Yu suddenly felt a chill on his back. On the battlefield, there were quite a few aliens at the Black Chariot level. If Zhu Yu seized their origin, their strength would be greatly improved. The most terrifying thing was that as geniuses among billions of creatures, these aliens possessed the top-level abilities. Zhu Yu swallowed their power and might swallow their abilities.
Although,
their relationship with the Jiangnan region looked good on the surface. The shadow left by Yuan Kongya still existed. Let's go and take a look at other places. Liang Yu immediately rode on Huahua and rushed to other battlefields. In the ocean, Xuanwu and Cartier's joined forces to fight against the combination of sea beasts and the black and white leaders of the enhanced system. Among the 5 battlefields, they were the most embarrassed. Although Cartier's had reached the level of the Black Chariot, there was still a clear gap between his strength and that of the sea beasts. If Newton had not left the Nautilus to him, relying on the powerful Tianwei weapons on it, I'm afraid that Cartier's and Xuanwu would have been killed long ago. Obviously, all this was within Newton's expectations. But even so, their battle was very strenuous. The sea beast was too powerful. He was completely an enhanced version of Xuanwu. Whether in size or destructive power, it was far superior to Xuanwu, and even its defense was similar to Xuanwu. In this battle, he almost fought 1 against 2, and completed the suppression of Cartier's and Xuanwu. The existence of the black and white commanders of the enhanced system became the last straw that broke the camel's back, and it was a very heavy straw. At this time, on the ocean battlefield, the Nautilus was in the deep sea and could only use long-range weapons to assist the 2 in the battle. If they got closer, there would be a risk of being directly destroyed. Lizardmen could not dive too deep into the seabed, so what could they do with this world's top deep-sea fortress? But Cartier's and Xuanwu were miserable. The tortoise shell on Xuanwu's body was broken into pieces, and the entire sea area was dyed bright red by his blood. One of Cartier's arms was torn off directly, revealing the complex structure inside. His body had been transformed beyond recognition. Although he still looked human on the surface, most of his skin had been reshaped by super spider fibers, and even his body was covered with micro-robots. He was half-kneeling on Xuanwu's shell in a state of embarrassment. He was always arrogant and gasped for breath, but the anger in his eyes never diminished. K. If I had known, I would have given up here and run away. He cursed viciously. Xuanwu rolled his eyes, and his voice rang in Xuanwu's ears. In fact, you could have escaped a long time ago. After all, you Colombian aliens are only here to help. Even if you die, it's our business. Newton had told Cartier's a long time ago that if he found the situation in crisis, he could leave on his own. In the dictionary of Colombian soldiers, there is no such thing as a fight to the death.